Hey folks, it's us, podcasting wonderkins John Bishop and Lucas Southworth.
Although this is a podcast about cars, it is not age appropriate for the target demographic of these films, as we usually end up talking about the reproductive organs of Lightning McQueen.
Alright, now let's take a look under the hood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kachad. It's the only podcast brave enough to ask the question, hey, what's up with cars? I'm Lucas Southworth.
And I'm John Bishop.
And, John, house hunting sucks, man.
Don't it just? Especially if you did it a year ago.
Or currently right now.
Yeah, it's all bad.
Yeah, I was on a call with my parents the other day, and if you don't know, dear listener, Liz and I have been looking for a place to live for, I don't know, 10 months now. And our standards are high. We're a little picky, but that's not the main issue of that's what's kept us away from having a house. And I was on a call with my mom, and she said, "Oh, Ben and Kristen just put in an offer on a house, who are my brother and sister-in-law." And I just had a moment of pure anger for a minute before having an instant to calm down. And realized they haven't gotten the house yet, and they did end up getting outbidded, so I felt even worse about that moment of anger.
Mm-hmm.
But be like, no, it'd be good if they got a new house. It doesn't mean anything about your personal journey through getting a house, but it was not a fun moment. I got like genuine mad for a second because I didn't even know they were looking for a new house. It was the first I heard of it was that they had maybe found one.
Yeah, so, boy howdy. My best advice I can give you is,
keep renting.
No,
Okay.
it's, well, maybe, but do not accept something just because you're afraid you're gonna lose it.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you're gonna get a house a lot more quickly, but also things will be wrong with it. Regrets will be had. And man, right now is a bad time for house hunting. The interest rate is like 7.5%. The value of any mortgage is pretty much double what it should be. Boy howdy, when are we gonna eat the rich?
I don't know, but I would like to know.
Mm-hmm. There's one politician who said, hey, all we need to do to solve like all of our problems is just have a vacancy tax. If you do a vacancy tax of like 20%, then the people who are just hoarding houses and not letting people rent them because they want to keep rent really high, they're either going to sell those houses because it's no longer worth it, or charge reasonable rates. And either of those things are going to significantly help a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea.
Yeah, if we did this, every single problem we're having would be funded.
I'm sure there's something about it that I haven't thought of, but just hearing the basics of it, I'm a fan.
Well, there are some major problems with it. The rich would have a harder time being as rich and gaining as much wealth as quickly, because owning something is
John,
definitely a job.
When are you going to start listing the problems, John?
Oh, well, this is America, and if there's one thing we care about, it's keeping the wealthy wealthy. Because you trickle down, you see. You have a bunch of glasses stacked on top of each other, and you pour a bunch of wine in the top glass. And then, when it's full, You get a bigger glass, and then eventually that biggest glass it'll weigh enough to crush all of the other ones, and then everything's going to trickle down because everything's been broken.
And then that'll be it. And isn't that great?
Yep.
Anyway, this is a Cars podcast. Yeah, is it? Can you
Yep.
confirm, John?
Well, let me check. Uh, hey Lucas, what's a mater baby?
Yeah, okay. Nothing. What's the matter with you,
Oh, you
baby?
got me. That one's for you, Tabby.
Ah, that's good. Tabby supplied that one for you, you said?
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure we've done it at some point within the past 158 hours, but who knows?
I I could see us not. Because I'm not sure I've ever made the connection between Mater Baby and Matter Baby before, you know?
Mm. Well, fair enough. All
Yeah.
right. So, what are we discussing this week on the podcast? You answer that question in detail while I look through my text trying to find the things that I'm looking for.
Will do. Well, I texted you this very question not 3 hours ago. Uh, and you texted back mortgages. And I looked at that and thought, I mean, I guess. And thought further, I guess we could expand it to, just the concept of housing, which we've discussed to a good degree in the past, but we could get into deeper and I don't know, retread the same ground we've done. It's not like we don't do that anyway. So that's basically this episode. I imagine I maybe called it more gauges.
That's
Like,
pretty good.
yeah. So there we go.
All right.
Do you need more vamping time? Oh, he
I
doesn't.
do
He's
not.
got it.
Uh, we're going to take a quick detour into corrections because we haven't done this in a long time. But corrections,
Really
I have
quick, John.
gotten the results. Yeah,
Why did you have me describe the episode only to derail it right afterwards?
because I needed vamp time so I could look for this correction
the
because this was sent on, oh, well, the 11th.
mm,
Yep.
well,
All right. So let's go for corrections from Faith, a number one fan, Faith, that is, of course. So I described the makeup, genetic makeup, the testing as being 25%, but it turns out apparently Christina is 9% Sioux, not Latina, which there's something to be said about, like, well, actually, no, is Sioux Middle American or is it more northern?
I believe they're in the USA area, but I could be wrong about that. I'll
Okay.
Google. Well, you keep talking.
Well, so not in fact that heavily Latina. In fact, in fact Native American. Now let me see one thing that's got me confused. All right, how would that be? I can't do math. That's good enough. That works. All right, so yeah, 9%. Neat.
There you go. If you don't know what John is talking about, much like how I didn't know what Faith, number one fan Faith, was talking about when she texted us this correction out of the blue, apparently John just discussed his mother in law's genetic makeup several episodes ago. And number one fan Faith listened to that. And number one fan Faith is the daughter of John's mother in law. Some would call her his sister in law.
Mm-hmm.
So she had the direct information to correct that.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Does that end corrections from Faith?
As far as I can recall.
Oh, she apparently we also talked about Twilight vampires at some point, and weren't sure if the blood that they sucked replaced their blood or went into their stomach, and it goes into their stomach. Faith is number one fan. Faith is also number one fan. Faith of Twilight, so she was a great source on that as well.
Mm-hmm. She does, in fact, have a blog. I say that as a question because I don't know how to describe it.
It's a Twilight blog, and at one point I knew the URL. And number one fan Faith, if you listen to this and want us to plug your Twilight blog, we'll do it. It's
But
our
only if you text us right
podcast.
now.
That'd be now that's interesting.
Why's that?
Because that's not how time works, at least to my knowledge.
Well, here's the thing. Right
Yeah.
now, as I'm describing it, you'd think it means as we are recording this, but when I say right now, it also could mean when it is being heard.
Oh, so right now being the moment she listens to it for the first time.
Hmm. Yes. Which
Okay.
unfortunately has passed because I said right now a little bit ago, and even if it's as
Sure.
she's listening to it, it was still in the past.
Hmm. Fascinating. The webs we weave, you know.
Hmm.
And what is a
Speaking of
web,
weaving a
John?
web, it's
But
a home.
a spider home.
Spider home, spider home. Probably doesn't cost as much as a regular mortgage.
But we don't know that, you know. We
We
just don't know
don't,
with the spider's economy.
but I feel like
Yeah,
it costs as much as the material that comes from the body
sure.
is due. So food, it costs food and effort,
Yeah. When you think about it, our human homes also cost food in that we eat the food to make energy, to do job, to get money, to pay mortgage,
but
unless you're
but
rich.
do you excrete wood?
John, not on the podcast.
Okay.
I'm not even
There.
sure what the implication was.
See now, one fear one would have going into that statement is, well, I can't say make or have.
Sure.
But if I say excrete, it can't be talking about that.
But I powered through anyway, now didn't I?
Mm-hmm. So
Great.
true.
Anyway, this is about houses. Most of the cars don't have them that we know of, but maybe they do. John, speak on that.
Well, for the most part, the things that we can describe as being houses are their places of business.
Yeah.
So that's neat and interesting, but also really sad. Because that means that in order to have a house, you also have to have a business.
Yeah, and it just gets really weird. Like, there are some people we just never, most characters in cars, we just don't see, sleeping.
Hmm.
So we can't really say 100% that, Lizzie lives in her little curio shop, but I don't know where else she would be living.
Yeah.
But then Lightning, he sleeps in Mac the trailer and a cone that is very, very, very slightly bigger than him.
Hmm.
And Mater the tow truck, I don't know this for sure, seems to sleep in an improvised lean to in the middle of a junkyard.
Yeah, I think that is in fact the case.
But then I was also thinking, because I really wanted to come up with one solid example of a house that was just a house.
Now,
And
do we count Doc,
he has his little shed garage
which
of,
is in fact not the courtroom,
yeah,
and it is not a hospital?
yeah, but it's not much better. That it's separate than his place of business, for
Yeah, it
sure.
is a separate place from the other two places he does his business.
But, like, in terms of living space, it's not much better than the cone,
It is just a garage.
which again makes a certain amount of sense. They're cars; they it makes sense that they would live in a garage.
Hmm.
But what I was thinking when I was trying to come up with a home that's just a home, closest I got was in Lightning's dream sequence in the first movie, where he's imagining what it would be like to be sponsored by Dynaco, and he goes through a bunch of flashes, and then he ends up in like what looks like a sort of Beverly Hills style mansion with Mia and Tia painted all gold, kissing him on the cheeks.
All
Uh,
right. All
wh-
right.
which, like, I get it. If I lived in a semi truck, I would also dream of housing.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe that's just an event space. It's not clear that it's Lightning's. Although, if I remember right, he does have a giant painting of himself on the wall. But I probably don't remember right, John. Who can say?
Oh no.
What's happened?
All right, so I've done a little bit of studying. You know how generally celebrities are creeps,
Yes, I do.
specifically straight white men?
Yes, I do.
All right, so this is from or on X, formerly known as Twitter. Uh, it's from at Cars Lorekeeper,
Okay.
and it's me and Tia are both 1989 Mazda MX-5 Miatas and are coded to be 18 in cars 2006. However, the manufacturer date would suggest that they are actually at the oldest 17. This is still
Huh.
roughly in line with their approximate ages, but leads to some unfortunate implications. Now, if we want to pretend things are more comfortable, professional athlete, he is a rookie. He's only been doing this for maybe 1 or 2 years because he had the other company as his sponsor for maybe a year. So there's a good chance he's just like 21. 21 to
Yeah,
17 is gross, but not nearly as gross as if he's like 30 or 40, which you could easily gain the implication of because he then does date Sally, who clearly has had an entire career and then stopped doing that career. But then maybe the implication is a more positive one that he doesn't mind an older woman.
sure. And I mean, I'm not going to be one to defend these crimes that we're accusing Lightning McQueen of, but we have also discussed at length that all ages are nonsense in cars.
Yes, we have seen
Uh,
children. They are physically smaller. They seem like fully sized cars, at least for me and Tia. But
but
still,
also that's not great.
yeah, not a good look.
Yeah, at the very least, it's
Especially
more.
after we've seen the preview for Cars 4.
I was gonna bring out up cars for the spin out, yeah.
Yep.
So maybe it's pretty in line.
Power!
What a guy!
Oh, what a guy. Gaston.
But do you
All right.
remember that sort of mansion I was describing from that dream sequence? Do you think that is a solid example of housing existing in the Carsverse?
I think it's an unfortunate revelation about the Cars universe being somewhat similar to ours in that the only reasonable house to have at this point is a mansion because you're going to be wealthy if you can afford a house.
I mean, yeah, it does speak to that, but it also speaks to the fact that houses exist, at the very least.
Because think about it this way: why do people have cars? Why would a car not need a house? Why would not cars? Why do people have houses? And why would a car not need a house for that same reason?
Protection from the elements, I
Yep.
guess. Yeah,
Because I'll tell you right now, I got myself 2 cars. Both those cars are outside cars.
yeah.
I have a very large garage. Realistically, though, it's only designed to fit one car in, even though it's super big because it's a giant L shape. And I keep both the cars outside.
But I mean, that being said, it does make a certain amount of sense, all of that. But the cars have also been shown to like get cold and desire warmth and not like being in the rain and or the snow. Like I don't know, like it's the same with a lot of things with cars. If they didn't humanize the cars so much, if they didn't anthropomorphize them so much, I would be like, yeah, they're cars. Why would they need houses? But they do a lot to make them very human esque,
Mm-hmm.
which is again sort of the whole backbone of this podcast is that they made the cars too human, so everything's all messed up, and we have to do a podcast about it.
Yeah. So, all right. A house.
Yes.
One of the things you're paying for is just size of house, available rooms, I have to imagine there are differences in like, oh, you're the average car. You're not gonna need like a kitchen. You're not gonna need several different kinds of rooms. Basically, you just need somewhere to be in when you're sleeping. I maybe a TV room, but we've already seen an example of someone sleeping where they are watching TV.
Yeah.
So, and like for humans, again, that's not healthy. Don't do that on account of it can give you trouble sleeping. I mean, do what you want. You're a free person, whatnot, but also it can help if you remove the TV from the room. But if you're a car, I don't know if anything's true.
Another in the long line of that would have been a good episode, a good podcast title is if you're a car, I don't know if anything is true.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, you're right. Like if we look, I think you're absolutely right to identify Doc's little shed almost as one of our best examples of a primary residence, and like all he needs is a place to be inside of and store his little knickknacks. And like they're cars, so they
Hmm.
don't need that many knickknacks.
They realistically they can't even interact with that many of their knickknacks.
Yeah, which is his own can of worms of how did Doc put those things on those shelves? Who can say? Maybe he hired Guido for the day. Uh,
Maybe he gave
but
them a court order.
that's true. I would argue that we've only seen Doc sentence two people in his time as well, two groups of people being Lightning and the delinquent road hazards in the credits of Cars.
Hmm.
And both seemed like weird abuses of power.
Weird abuses
So
of power, specifically requiring manual labor.
yes, so yeah, maybe, but yeah, because like
Oh
we
no, do you
leave
think it was like a threat of deportation thing?
I
Because I can't
hope
imagine him
not.
actually committing a crime.
See, I imagine just you know he told him to do it under threat of being thrown into the jail he mentions in Cars 1 that he wants to throw Lightning into until it falls down and then build a new jail around him.
Yeah,
But I mean, it could be if you want to make it worse, which we usually do.
I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a weird tendency of like, oh, well, they're dead, so you got to be more respectful. But then there's also, well, yeah, when they're dead is when a lot of stuff comes out.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe he was a terrible, terrible person.
I think there's some evidence there. I don't know. I just don't know, John.
We know he's very comfortable abusing power.
And that's one of the only things we do know.
Hmm.
Uh, but I was going to say something. Oh, I was going to go through room by room, which you sort of did earlier, but I feel like you stopped. Just
Yeah,
to, yeah.
right.
I
Turlet.
Yeah, they don't need a turlet. Is where I was getting to. We've decided officially in the Kachanan that they, if they eat food, they have to throw it back up. So they probably don't do that very much,
Unless,
unless
unless they're a lemon, in which
that's
case they do need a toilet because they're going to be leaking.
that's fair. But I feel like that could be almost just an installation in the room. I don't know what they're called. The holes in the floor, like when you get your oil changed at Valvoline.
Hmm. I don't know what that is, but
You know what
I
I'm
would just
talking about,
assume
though.
like a built-in bedpan situation,
Yeah, that probably makes more sense.
like a medical
Uh,
thing that is comparable to humans and not the thing that's for cars because that would make too much sense.
for sure, for sure.
Oh,
I think
Lucas,
you're.
what if that was how they interacted with the manufacturer? Is that every person who has a home, they go into that home and then they sleep over top of one of those Valvoline pits, and the manufacturer's just in there.
I mean, every time we mention the manufacturer, we often describe them as an underground civilization. So I like that, man.
They're an underground civilization that can only come out through these weird manhole like things that are in everyone's house. It's like the monster that lives under the bed, except it's the thing that keeps you going
And they always put the little sticker on the windshield to tell you when to get your next oil change.
on the inside of your eye.
That,
That's what a floater is for people.
oh man, yeah, okay.
The monster that lives under your bed is actually the guy who keeps you put together. So if you have like a nightlight, it scares him away, and that's why you've got so much anxiety because you're falling apart.
Quick tangent. I went to Valvoline recently to get my oil changed because I'm a responsible adult and car owner.
Hmm.
And did you know that the air filter that they change in your engine doesn't affect the air in like the cabin of the car? There is a separate air filter that should be changed. That's in the cabin of your car for that.
It's in the glove box, right?
Yeah, it's behind the glove box.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So I've had this car. Let's see, 6 years, maybe. So wasn't probably a good place to breathe in
Mm.
for at least a good portion of those. Uh,
Well, I've had my car for like year and a half, almost 2 years, and well, I I should have changed some air filters, but very, very early on, there was a milk spill,
mm,
and the air quality isn't as much of a concern as the fact that everything smells like rotten milk whenever it gets too hot,
Now, yeah, a milk spill's pretty devastating. Uh,
especially if it's spilled into the ventilation system.
ooh, that's real rough, man.
Yeah.
So sounds like my car is actually the better one to breathe in. Uh, and now it's great to breathe in because they said, "Do you want to change your other air filter?" And I went, "What?" And they said, "The one for the cabin." And I realized at that moment that, which happens most trips to Valvoline, these people know more than you. Just you gotta hide that though. And I went, "Oh, sure, absolutely." And, and they did it, and I tried not to look amazed. To probably varying levels of success as it happened. I didn't
Hmm.
even know you could take off the glove box. They,
Oh
they
yeah.
took it all the way off.
Now, for the most part, I think you just like pull it out all the way and you can reach back there. So I don't know if it's specific to your car or certain other cars, but I don't think I've seen someone take the glove box out to do it.
Who knows? This is a while ago. My
Mm,
memory's not great.
fair.
Ah, so that's good. That's like car lung?
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right, this is a tangent I should not go down,
Hey, I just
but
tangent the tangent, man. We don't have stuff to say about mortgages.
yesterday I met, well, I didn't meet them really. They were just there. I was doing some filming, and then someone said they were a Trump supporter. I was like, oh no. No, wait, I got the order wrong.
Sure.
This is pretend you didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Uh, so I heard someone say that they were a flat earther,
Oh, yeah.
and then they came out with they're also a Trump supporter, and of course I was like, oh no, but I was also kind of like, I mean, after the first one, yeah,
Yeah. You can sort of make the leap without help at that point, I would imagine.
yeah. And then I also was talking to someone, and they're like, oh yeah, we're anti-vax, and it was just so frustrating because I didn't want to be mean to this guy because I could tell that it came from a place of just suspicion and ignorance rather than like any sort of malice. But like he would just say things like, "Well, no, that's because this," and then I would just like give basic reasons, and it would always just be, "Oh, well, let's say something else then." because you could tell that he realized that I knew what I was talking about,
Sure.
and he didn't want to have the conversation because he wasn't going to change his mind. So eventually he just said I was a knowledgeable guy and he likes that. But like anytime I refuted a point, it was just, yeah, let's say something else then.
I mean, sometimes I guess that's all you. Well, what you shouldn't do that. You should listen to opposing ideas and let them into your brain. But sometimes that's your only defense mechanism is changing the subject.
Yeah, especially if you're conservative.
Yeah.
Oh boy. And one of the things that I kept going back to that he kept having to change the subject on over and over again was he would say things like, "Yeah, that's not going to protect you." Like, well, it's more about protecting other people. It's about helping other people and not yourself as much. And it was just, "Oh, well, I'm going to say something very similar but a different way because I want to make my point and I don't want to come off as selfish even though my point is one of being selfish."
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you think the process of buying and selling a house would be any different in the cars first, John?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
When I proposed the idea of talking about mortgages, I realized, like after a little bit, that unfortunately it's going to be really hard to have this discussion because a lot of my thoughts and feelings about mortgages pertain to our world. And as a general rule of thumb, we like to make jokes about, well, this is insane in the cars world, or this would be terrible. But we do have a general assumption that things are just better because it's a movie for kids. This is a universe aimed towards children. So we typically give the benefit of the doubt and the thought of, well, this world is better than our world in some just like generic ways. It's more idealized. I have to imagine that in this world, yeah, there are greedy people, but it's not an entire system built on greed.
Sure.
And the idea, like the thing that's wrong with capitalism, the thing that's wrong with house and home ownership is that people want to make money. And owning all of the homes is a great way to make money, unless you're, taxed on owning homes you don't live in. But I can't imagine that in a world that's simplified and more idealistic, that there are that many people with that much power buying all of the houses. Because that's true in our world. But again, this is a world for kids. There has to be hope.
I
And
mean,
no offense to our world, but hope has to be tempered with the idea of, yeah, but can someone profit off of it? If so, then you can't really hope unless we get the government involved and they're being paid off. So, no.
I would offer as a counterpoint to the general idea of the made for kids has to be better. The entire last episode we did on Thomas the Tank Engine and the capitalistic hellscape it is,
Yeah, yeah.
but I do enjoy the train of thought, so I will allow it anyway.
I will counter your counter with, yeah, but we discussed how it was the capitalist hellscape and then the trains took over and ate the rich.
Yes, to make cars, they're
Yes.
utopia. Sure, sure, sure.
So even in that, it was an origin in which everything was bad and then became a better world that's more idealistic for kids. And there is the argument of, well, it's also a thing for kids, so the evil is going to be more cartoonishly evil.
Sure,
Like Donald Trump is an evil man because he's selfish, stupid, and powerful. But the people in the Cars world that are evil are a rich man who is actually pretty capable and wants to blow people up so he can profit. I don't think Trump wants to blow people up for profit, but I do think that if he found out that he could get away with blowing people up for profit because it was like this like easiest way to do it, he would. They would probably be like people of color,
yeah.
but yeah.
So
I'm
are you
just saying
saying
I don't think Donald Trump would come up with the idea for blowing people up.
Yeah, he wouldn't blow people up and find a way to make it profitable. He would,
If
the
he found out
opposite.
it was profitable, he
Yeah,
would then do it.
that's maybe the nicest thing we've said about him on our show. Uh,
That
which
he
is,
wouldn't actively try to justify blowing people up.
but who knows? He maybe would. But so, are you saying that there's universal housing in this world, universal basic housing, or just that it's a slightly better system under capitalism?
I think that if it is a capitalist system, that it's an idealistic version of capitalism where there
Yeah,
isn't one company that owns everything. It's several companies that keep each other all in check. No one's actually winning the race and destroying the others. And as such, when people need a house, they buy a house. And then when people don't need a house, they don't buy houses and then sell those houses to people who are less fortunate.
or Airbnb them. Uh, I'm on a subreddit that is following the potential downfall of the Airbnb empire, and man,
Oh boy.
every day, I hope.
Every day, but also have you okay, so I've gone on a spiral many times on TikTok recently, and I have gotten to a point where I'm getting like video suggestions like, hey, here's why China's gonna collapse within the next 10, 20 years. And it's just absurd to me. And the reason is basically population growth is very negative, and they're gonna have a population that is pretty much all retired by 2030.
Hmm. What was the question there? Have I seen things like that? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Have you also like when you go on spirals of oh here's how Airbnb, here's how rich people do bad, does it ever take you further and further down? Oh, here's how entire economy's gonna collapse.
Yeah, which is, also sort of the pipeline to radicalization, just generally on the internet, like
Yeah.
broadly. So I try to temper it and whatnot. And there's a lot of people who don't seem to make those efforts on that subreddit. And
Oh yeah.
but
It's everywhere.
yeah, the internet is an outrage machine
Hmm.
for all sides, every side, and
Yeah.
that's rough. But
It's an outrage machine for the right side and the wrong side.
yes, sorry, I'm just checking to see if anyone else has RSVP'd for my wedding, which probably shouldn't be doing during the middle of our episode. But man, I don't know. It's like a week before the deadline, and we have literally exactly half. No, one less than exactly half of people have responded. So
See, I've heard that what you do is you invite a bunch of people and then you only ever expect a third of them to say yes.
no, yeah, and like we don't care if well, we care, but we don't mind if they can't come. We just want to know that. We
Hmm.
just want them to tell us,
Yeah, man.
which I have certainly been guilty of not doing in the past, and will after being on the other side of it, I think will hopefully be better with.
I so with the ADHD brain, I get procrastination,
Oh,
but also
100%.
like it's it's rough when you've got a thing with a lot of people involved
Yeah.
and a lot of them are procrastinating.
Yeah,
Oh
and
boy.
again, they've got a week until the deadline we've set, so I can't be mad, but it would be nice to have a more solid number. But anyway, it would also be nice to have a solid understanding of housing in the Carsverse.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think houses are just little garages. Is that where we've gone to? Like Doc Hudson's basically, and there are some opulent ones like the one Lightning dreamed of, but not really that many.
Yeah. Uh I like the idea of UBI. I like the idea of just everything is taken care of with regard to anything that is a need. I like the whole yeah, we could easily just solve homelessness situation, the idea of that being resolved. Uh I do think there's something to the idea that they just don't need it. as much. Like imagine you live in just like a nice temperate climate and you're just good. Like on a bad day, if there's like some bad weather, it gets really cold or something like that, maybe you just go to an area where there's like something over top of you.
Yeah, and I mean that's seemingly what Mater does. He lives in the Arizona desert, so and he has his little open air lean to looking thing for if it ever does actually rain. But he's fine, which is very Mater in my head. It makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah.
So I
All right.
guess
Here's
claustrophobia is not a big issue in this
oh,
world. Is
definitely
also
not.
what I'm getting into.
Yeah. So my son was sitting at the place we were just eating at. And he tried to get up and then he hit his head on the top of the table. It wasn't hard or anything, but he realized there was something on top and he couldn't like get up straight and he started freaking out and I realized, yeah, my son's probably claustrophobic. And then we went afterwards to a park with like a little playground and there was this tiny little house that he loved to be in and it was huh, he likes something that's much smaller, but something that he can stand up in. So it's like a halfway point of I want to feel encapsulated. I don't want to feel restricted. And I
Yeah,
wonder if that's similar for the cars because you drive in there, you can't really turn around, and that seems too much. But in Doc's, like I'm talking about the cozy cone,
yeah,
but you go to Doc's garage and you can turn around in that thing.
yeah. Which and Lightning seems perfectly at home in the back of Mac too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think
Pretty
it's just.
cozy.
I think they're just fine. They just don't mind, which good for them. That's probably also helping any sort of potential housing crisis. Is they don't have to be very big.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially given that the actual population is car sized.
Mm.
So if they were as big proportionally, that'd be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Boy,
So
howdy.
clearly we've finished up talking about this pretty well.
Uh huh.
Uh, so I wanted to bring up something else. Number one fan faith did, which was create Kachat Bingo.
Mm-hmm. And you can play along at home.
Yeah, we'll tweet this out, even though X is now a hell site. Uh,
What is it still tweeting?
who knows? We won't go through all of these, but I did want to ask which of these did you feel most uh let's call it called out by?
Boy, howdy.
Yeah. That's what I basically wanted to bring that up because I had to imagine that was it.
Yeah.
I also felt very called out by Lucas doesn't like that because it did make me realize I say, no, I don't like that. Maybe not as much as Boy Howdy, but pretty often.
Yeah. See, my brother, and me borrowing. I feel like that's a bit more of a rare one, but it is definitely a significant thing when it happens.
We're also
Uh,
perfectly aware of it though. Like
yeah.
we make fun of ourselves for it.
And I am easy to gross out if anything has anything to do with like body fluids. And we're talking about cars as if people, and it's hard not to mention body fluids a significant amount. And there's a wiki quote of the day every episode in theory.
In theory, and I did open up the you know what? Let's help him out. Let's help him get bingo, John.
Mm-hmm.
Uh by
Have we
going
mentioned
over to
cars in the past 5 minutes? I'm sure there's been a 5 minute span in this very episode where we didn't.
depends on if you count me talking about my real life car as a car earlier. I would have to imagine.
Fair enough.
Also, right at the beginning, we talked about the troubles of finding a house in the real world for a while, so probably that one got it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, we're doing a wiki quote. It is bigcars.fandom.com/wiki/White House. Uh, the White House is the official residence and workplace of the President of the United States. So at least
All
someone has a
right.
house.
And we know that because it's called the White House, that the idea of a house is a commonplace thing.
Yes, I was going to bring that up as well. I did also search the word mortgage, and for some reason, the article on tractors was the first result. I did search it, and there is no mention of the word mortgage. I just thought that was kind of funny that it was the first one.
Yeah. All right. That's a bit bizarre, but also very good.
Squishy bit mentioned would be a pretty easy one to
Hmm.
get most of the time.
Now,
Uh,
wasabi mentioned, that
that
seems
one's
pretty
interesting to me.
specific.
Yeah, that one's I feel like we don't do quite as much.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, that's a thing.
Now,
You can look at it on our Twitter.
I'm shocked because I don't think this one has happened this episode, and that's Rory or Gigi cries and Bella barks.
If it has to be and Bella barks,
Well,
then yeah, it
or
doesn't. Okay, I have heard a child earlier.
was it crying?
They were definitely shouting.
Mm. I think Gigi was just being brought inside.
Sure. So I don't know. That one we would have to go to the judges, which I guess would be number one fan faith.
Hmm. Let us
So
know. Did we
yeah,
get
please
bingo?
do. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and specific thanks to number one fan faith for jumping back in and making all these things that we said this episode. You're the best, and there's a reason you're the number one fan. If you want to be like number one fan faith, well, don't text us unless you already have our phone number, but you can email us. Which number one fan faith did send us a couple emails. We'll get into those next time. Now that I think about it, you can also tweet at us for some amount of time. Those are thekachat at gmail.com and at thekachat on Twitter or X or whatever the hell. Now John says his part of the outro and then goes to the bathroom.
Remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell anyone and everyone you think might be the least bit interested in this kooky, quirky, strange little podcast. And until next time, remember to float like a Cadillac.
And sting like a beamer.